The book is The Myth of Normal by Gabor Maté. I should know how to say his name, but I don't. Trauma distorts our view of the world. Everything has mind in the lead, has mind in the forefront, is made by the mind. Thus opens the Dhammapada, the Buddha's timeless collection of sayings. Put another way, the world we believe in becomes the world we live in. If I see the world as a hostile place where only winners thrive, I may well become aggressive, selfish, and grandiose to survive in such a milieu. Later in life, I will gravitate to competitive environments and endeavors that can only affirm the view and reinforce its validity. Our beliefs are not only self-fulfilling, they are world-building. Hello, hello. That is totally fine, because I am not going to be talking a lot. I am going to be reading, so feel free to fall asleep or press play or whatever. Here's what the Buddha left out, if I may be so bold. Before the mind can create the world creates our minds. Trauma, especially severe trauma, imposes a worldview tinged with pain, fear, and suspicion. A lens that both distorts and determines our view of how things are. Or it may, through the sheer force of denial, engender a naively rose perspective that blinds us to real and present dangers. A veneer concealing fears we dare not acknowledge. One may also come to dismiss painful realities by habitually lying to oneself and others. Trauma alienates us from the present. I once shared a meal in an Oslo restaurant with the German psychologist Franz Rupert. The noise was overwhelming, loud pop music pumping through several speakers and multiple TV channels blaring from bright screens mountain high on the walls. I have to think that when the great Norwegian playwright Henrik Ibsen used to hold court in that same establishment a little over a century before, the ambiance was more serene. "What's this all about?" I shouted to my companion over the cacophony, shaking my head in exasperation. "Trauma," he replied as he shrugged his shoulders. Rupert meant simply that people were desperately seeking an escape from themselves. If trauma entails a disconnection from the self, then it makes sense to say that we are being collectively flooded with influences that both exploit and reinforce trauma. Work pressures, multitasking, social media, news updates, multiplicities of entertainment sources. These all induce us to become lost in thoughts, frantic activities, gadgets, meaningless conversations. We are caught up in pursuit of all kinds that draw us on not because they are necessary or inspiring or uplifting, or because they enrich or add meaning to our lives, but simply because they obliterate the present. Stay present, you guys. In an absurd twist, we save up to buy the latest time-saving devices, the better to kill time. Awareness of the moment has become something to fear. Late-stage capitalism is expert in catering to this sense of present moment dread. In fact, much of its success depends on the chasm between us and the present, our greatest gift, getting even wider. The false products and artificial distractions of consumer culture designed to fill in the gap. Excuse me. What is lost is well described by the Polish-born writer Eva Hoffman as nothing more or less than the experience of experience itself. And what is that? Perhaps something like the capacity to enter into the textures or sensations of the moment, to relax enough so as to give oneself over to the rhythms of an episode or a personal encounter, to follow the thread of feeling or thought without knowing where it leads, or to pause long enough for reflection or contemplation. Ultimately, what we are distracted from is living. It didn't start with you. Jessica, a 67-year-old resident of Regina, Saskatchewan, is caring for her 2 grandchildren. Their father, her son, having died of an overdose. Her other son suffered the same fate. As I interviewed her, it occurred to me that Jessica, even being willing to speak with me, was remarkable. Knowing my view that addiction originates in childhood trauma, most often in the family of origin. When I go back and look at my son's lives, I understand that there was a lot of trauma, she explained. I was living with them, so I was part of that. I was a single parent from the time they were 2 and 3 until I remarried. When they were 6 and 7, I understand that how I lived, what I was doing, what I knew, what I didn't know, affected them. After the birth father abandoned the family early, a stepfather abused the boys both physically and emotionally. I was lonely and scared and feeling trapped, Jessica recalled. That she would lack the gut sense not to choose such men, and that she would not assert herself and protect her sons in the face of abuse were the marks of a wounding sustained in Jessica's own childhood. Though aware she was loved, she was also left alone with deep emotional distress that, over time, she was forced to disconnect from. I was ashamed a lot for my feelings as a child, she recalled. I was very sensitive and I cried a lot. Trauma is, in most cases, multi-generational. The chain of transmission goes from parent to child, stretching from the past into the future. We pass on to our offspring what we haven't resolved in ourselves. The home becomes a place where we unwittingly recreate, as I did, scenarios reminiscent of those that wounded us when we were small. Traumas affect mothers and mothering, and fathers and fathering, and husbanding and wifing. The family constellation therapist Mark Woolen told me. The repeated traumas continue to proliferate from that. As a result, they never get healed. Woolen is the author of the apt titled It Didn't Start With You, How Inherently... it is called The Myth of Normal by Gabor Mate. I don't know how to say his last name, but we're trying. It Didn't Start With You, How Inherited Family Trauma Shapes Who We Are and How We End the Cycle. Trauma may even affect gene activity across generations, as we will see. It is no surprise, then, that Jessica's eldest grandchild has faced problems with substance abuse and behavior and learning difficulties. Because of all she has learned, and despite her unfathomable losses, she is able to be present for him much more warmly and effectively than she ever could have for her own sons. Note 2. The absence of self-judgment in Jessica's description of the situation. She speaks of understanding rather than castigating herself for what she didn't, nay, couldn't understand way back when. The act of blaming herself, its gravitational center planted permanently in the past, would only divert her from showing up for her loved one in the here and now. I'm going to reread that. Note 2, the absence of self-judgment in Jessica's description of the situation. She speaks of understanding rather than castigating herself for what she didn't, nay, couldn't understand way back when. The act of blaming herself, its gravitational center planted permanently in the past, would only divert her from showing up for her loved one in the here and now. Blame becomes a meaningless concept the moment one understands how suffering in a family system or even in a community extends back through the generations. Recognition of this quickly dispels any disposition to see the parent as villain, wrote John Bowlby, the British psychiatrist who showed the decisive importance of adult-child relationships in shaping the psyche. No matter how far back we look in the chain of consequences, great-grandparents, pre-modern ancestors, Adam and Eve, the first single-celled amoeba, the accusing finger can find no fixed target that should come as relief. The news gets better. Seeing trauma as an internal dynamic grants us much needed agency. Agency means the ability to choose. Hi, Johnny. I hope your push-ups are going good. Wait 1 minute. Okay. No matter? Okay. If we treat trauma as an external event, something that happens to or around us, then it becomes a piece of history we can never dislodge. Trying to keep awareness of trauma at bay hobbles our capacity to know ourselves. To keep awareness of trauma at bay hobbles our capacity to know oneself. Conversely, fashioning from it a rock-hard identity, whether the attitude is defiance, cynicism, or self-pity, is to miss both the point and the opportunity of healing, since by definition, trauma represents a distortion and limitation of who we were born to be. Facing it directly without either denial or over-identification becomes a doorway to health and balance. It's those adversities that open up your mind and your curiosity to see if there are new ways of doing things, Bessel van der Kolk told me. He then cited Socrates. An unexamined life is not worth living. As long as one doesn't examine oneself, one is completely subject to whatever one is wired to do. But once you become aware that you have choices, you can exercise those choices. Notice that he didn't say, once you spend decades in therapy. As I will present later, we can access liberation via even modest self-examination, a willingness to question many of the truths we cling to and the certain point of view that makes them seem so real. As a famous Jedi Master's Force Gold told his dispirited young apprentice at a pivotal moment in a galaxy far, far away. My burger is not agreeing with me. This chapter has focused on its personal dimensions. Trauma exists in the collective sphere too, affecting entire nations and people at different moments in history. To this day, it is visited upon some groups with disproportionate force, as on Canada's Indigenous people. Their multi-generational deprivation and persecution at the hands of colonialism, and especially the 100-year agony of their children abducted from their families and reared in church-run residential schools where physical, sexual, and emotional abuse were rampant, has left them with tragic legacies of addiction, mental and physical illness, suicide, and ongoing transmission of trauma to new generations. The traumatic legacy of slavery and racism in the United States is another salient example. I will have to I will have more to say about this painful subject in part 5. So once we are courageous enough to address the traumas that we have endured through a lens of understanding, we are then given the choice to grow from them. But trauma and the mind distorts our perception of reality, and it disconnects us from the present, ourselves, and the world around us. Chapter 2: Living in an immaterial world. Emotions, health, and the body-mind unity. Unless we can measure something, science won't concede it exists, which is why science refuses to deal with such non-things as the emotions, the mind, the soul, and the spirit. Candace Pert, PhD, Molecules of Emotion. I was 36 when they told me it was a very early breast cancer, said Carolyn, a resident of the Pocono Mountains of Pennsylvania. That diagnosis occurred more than 3 decades ago in 1988. The tumor was treated with surgery and radiation. A few years later, with a new malignancy showed up in her left hip and femur, Carolyn required emergency joint replacement. The surgeons had to remove a large part of her thigh bone as well. At that time, they gave me a timeline of 1 to 2 years, she recalled. My boys were very young, only 8 and 9. I've just turned 56, so I've beaten all their records. Carolyn had multiple courses of chemotherapy over the intervening years. By the time of our conversation, the cancer had reached the palliative state, having spread to her right hip and thigh. As we spoke, she could not expect to outpace her current prognosis by much. Still, this mother of 2 radiated deep satisfaction with how things had gone. She had, after all, gained 2 unforeseen decades to raise her kids. You know, she mused, looking at my own mortality and them telling me I had 12 to 24 months. I got extremely profane with the doctor and said, sorry, I need 10 years to raise them to be men. I will do anything in my power to raise them to be men. Profane, I repeated. What exactly did you say? I used the F word. I said, F your statistics. Good for you, I offered. That probably helped extend your life. Well, that's what I said to him, Carolyn laughed. I said, F your statistics. I need those years to raise them to be men. He walked out of the room. He didn't appreciate my language. He thought I was a crazy, vulgar woman. I can't imagine. I've often walked to look for that doctor. He has since moved to California, and tell him that my boys are now 24 and 25. One's in grad school at Princeton. The other one went through a difficult period, pulled himself up, and will be graduating with 3 degrees on the dean's list. Carolyn's outburst at the unsuspecting physician was out of character. All her life, she had fit the profile of the nice person who avoids confrontation. My way was always being the caretaker, being needed, always coming to someone's rescue, a lot of time to my own detriment, she told me. I never wanted to have conflict with anyone, and I always had to be in charge, making sure everything was okay. Carolyn had exhibited what has been called super autonomous self-sufficiency, which means exactly what it sounds like, an exaggerated and outsized aversion to ask anything of anyone. A quick note. Nobody is born with such traits. They invariably stem from coping reactions to developmental trauma, beginning with self-abnegation in early childhood. I have to look that word up. Does anybody know what that means? Self-abnegation. Google. Such suppression takes a lasting toll. Self-abnegation. Such suppression, so it's some form of suppression then, takes a lasting toll, a process we'll explore more fully in Chapter 7. I've come to believe that virtually all illness, if not psychosomatic in foundation, man, 21 minutes. We only have a couple more pages. I'm so tired. I'm sleepy. I've come to believe that virtually all illness, if not psychosomatic in foundation, has a definite psychosomatic component. The pioneer neuroscientist Candace Pert wrote in her 1997 book, Modules of Emotion. By psychosomatic, Pert did not imply the modern, often derisive dismissal of disease as a neurotic figment. Like, most of those words in that sentence were freaking hard, and I need to Google. Instead, she meant the world's strict scientific connotation having to do with the oneness of the human psyche, mind, and spirit, and the soma, the body. Mind, body, and spirit. A oneness she did much to measure and record in the laboratory. Her discoveries, as she justly claimed, would help fuel a synthesis of behavior, psychology, and biology. There is nothing novel about the notation of the mind and body being intricately linked. If anything, what is new is the belief, tacitly held and overtly enacted by many well-meaning doctors, that they are separable. Traditional healing practices the world over, while lacking the wondrous technology and scientific know-how developed in the West, have long understood this unity implicitly. Despite Western medicine's artificial cleaving of the two, most people still know, if only on a gut level, that what they think and how they feel have everything to do with each other. It is run of the mill, for instance, to speculate about which life stresses have contributed to one's ulcer, what mental strain is behind a headache, and what unprocessed fears lead to the experience panic attacks. The same principle applies when we look not just at individual symptoms, but at most type of diseases. Emotional perturbances stemming from relationship troubles, financial worries, or any other source of chronic upset impose physiologically burdens that can result in illness. Pert coined the term body-mind to describe the oneness. The official website dedicated to her work and legacy takes care to note that this expression was intentionally written without a hyphen in order to emphasize unity of its component parts. Body and mind, while not identical, cannot be understood separately from each other. We can ignore or deny this paradox, but we cannot escape it. Since Pert's groundbreaking work, the biological impact of emotions, those none things whose non-recognition she lamented, have been extensively researched and documented in many thousands upon thousands of ingenious studies. It's worth looking at a few of these, bearing in mind that each is only the tip of the iceberg of similarly compelling findings. Excuse me. Yes, the children are sleeping. Thank goodness. Bang, bang, bang. Bang, 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 bang. Is that so, Mike? I saw your comment. I haven't got back to it yet, but it made me laugh. I was like, Mike. A 1982 German study presented at the Fourth Intentional Symposium on the Prevention and Detection of Cancer in London found certain personality traits to have a strong association with breast cancer. 56 women admitted to hospital for biopsy were evaluated for characteristics such as emotional suppression, rationalization, altruistic behavior, the avoidance of conflict, and the super autonomous self-sufficiency we saw embodied by Carolyn. Based on the interview results alone, both the interviewers and blind raters who had no direct contact with the women were able to predict the correct diagnosis in up to 94% of all cancer patients. That's a lot. And in about 70% of the benign cases, In a previous British study at King's College Hospital in London, it had also been shown that women with cancerous breast lumps characteristically exhibited extreme suppression of anger and of other feelings in a significantly higher proportion than the control group, which was made up of women admitted for biopsy at the same time but found to have benign breast tumors. In 2000, we're gonna make it, you guys. We're gonna make it. We have one more page. I can't believe it's already 11. I gotta wake up in 4 hours. In 2000, the publication Cancer Nursing surveyed the relationship of anger, repression, and cancer, often noted by, among others, the cancer nurses themselves. Somehow, nurses had an intuitive understanding that this niceness was deleterious. This view now is being supported by research. The nurse's insight reminded me of a paper on amyotrophic lateral sclerosis, ALS, presented by two Cleveland Clinic neurologists at an international congress in Bavaria in the 1990s. Their staff, too, found that their ALS patients were extraordinarily nice. So much so that the staff could in most cases accurately predict who would be diagnosed with the condition and who would not. I'm afraid that this person has ALS. She is too nice. They would jot on the patient's file, or this person cannot have ALS, he is not nice enough. The neurologists were dumbfounded. In spite of the briefness of the staff contact with the patients and the obvious unscientific method by which they formed their opinions, almost invariably they proved to be correct, they remarked. Don't be too nice, you guys. Don't be too nice. I am definitely going to get some rest. I cannot wait. Cannot wait. I'm so tired. It's going to be a good night's sleep. I already can tell. I'm committed. I interviewed Dr. Asa J. Wilborn, senior author of the paper It's Almost Universal, he told me. It becomes common knowledge in the laboratory where you evaluate a lot of patients with ALS. My nose is running. Don't you judge me. Thank you. It becomes common knowledge in the laboratory where you evaluate a lot of patients with ALS, and we do an enormous number of cases. I think that anyone who deals with ALS knows that this is a definite phenomenon. Such anecdotal observations have since been reaffirmed by more formal research, as seen in the title of a recent paper from a neurologist journal entry. Patients with ALS are usually nice persons. How physicians experienced in ALS see the personality characteristics of their patients. In a study of men with prostate cancer, anger suppression was associated with a diminished effectiveness of natural killer cells. A frontline immune system defends against malignancy and foreign invaders. These cells play a key role in tumor resistance. In previous research, NK cell activity was reduced in healthy young people in response to even relatively minor stresses, especially for those who are emotionally isolated, a significant source of chronic stress. Grief-2 has a powerful psychological dimension. An illuminating study from the British journal Lancet Oncology described the impact of psychological factors on the intricate pathways linking the immune system, the hormones, and the nervous system in, for example, bereavement. Among parents who lost an adult son to an accident or military conflict, the authors reported increased occurrence of lymphatic and hematological malignancy, cancers of the blood, bone marrow, and lymph nodes, along with skin and lung cancer. War kills, and so it seems, can deep emotional loss. As for cancer, so with other illnesses. In a Danish nationwide study, grieving parents had doubled the risk of multiple sclerosis. It's not sclerosis. Despite such compelling evidence, I do not believe the loss of a loved one, however tragic, by itself necessarily poses a health risk. I believe the latter depends on how people are able to process their loss, including what support they may reach out for and receive. It's not only events as such, but also our emotional responses and how we process them that affect our sociology. One 2019 study alone in cancer research should set every clinician on a fast-track exploration of body-mind medicine. Women with severe post-traumatic stress disorder were found to have twice the risk of ovarian cancer as women with no known trauma exposure. The Daily Gazette, published by Harvard University, where the study was done, reported the findings indicate that having higher levels of PTSD symptoms, such as being easily startled by ordinary noises or avoiding reminders of the traumatic experience, can be associated with increased risk of ovarian cancer, even decades after women experience a traumatic event. The more severe the trauma symptoms, the more aggressive the cancer proved to be. And that's it for tonight, you guys. Bless you, bless you. So just a recap of that. It only took a half hour for me to read 10 pages. How wonderful. But I do feel like I'm getting better. Okay, so a recap of what we read. Trauma distorts the view of the world. We are living in a world that our mind is determining for us. Trauma alienates us from the present, disconnects you from yourself, the world. It didn't start with you. Trauma is generational. A lot of times, if you had a traumatic childhood, chances are your parents probably had traumatic childhoods also, and before them, and before them, and before them. And once we are able to have compassion and understanding and the courage to go there to have that understanding, you let go of the anger and you let go of the you're a villain, because you're able to have empathy that they're messed up because they were messed up. Let's see. Being too nice. Being too nice leads to illness. Being too nice, not being able to speak up for yourself, being too agreeable. Those are all things that they found in 96%, they said, of the cancer patients. They were having nurses come in there, and based off of how nice or not nice the patient was, they were able to determine that they had an illness or not. Losing people is excruciatingly hard, especially when you are close with them, love them, even if you're not close, but you guys, let's say, are around each other every day. Maybe you guys can't stand each other. Just even that connection and losing that connection can be so traumatic on a person that the way that they reach out and the way that they try to process the loss, that is the determining factor of whether or not there is an increased risk of sickness. Yeah, and mind, body, and spirit. I mean, we know mind, body, and spirit are all connected. Can't have one without the other. I love when you self-correct your pronunciation. Plus, your accent is amazing. Bonus points, actually learned something. Go figure. Aw, thanks, Mike. I really appreciate hearing that. Thank you. I don't... Where are you from that I have an accent? I get that I have an accent. Like, people say that. And I'm just like, no way. I have an accent? Is it anything like an Irish accent to me? Like... No idea what's going on, but I guess I missed the Kool-Aid. Oh, you did miss the Kool-Aid, but that's okay. We will be here tomorrow. And Scotland. Oh, you're from Scotland? You have a cool accent. Oh, that's cool. All right. That's it. Thank you guys so much for joining me. If I posted a couple of shorts today, but I will be trying to work on getting some long form out. My main objective right now with this channel is to continue doing my lives for reading and for my exercise. I hope you guys have a spectacular day, and I will see you when I see you. Love you. Bye.